Like this video to support. Join our YouTube family now and never miss out on epic content, entertainment, and surprises. Hit that subscribe button. Let's start. Spoiler alert.
In London, Anne walks inside an apartment looking for her father, Anthony. She finds him and is unhappy with him since he forced another caretaker nurse to leave after becoming threatening and abusive with her and accusing her of stealing. He alleges she was stealing from him and took his watch. Anne asks if he has searched under the bathtub where he keeps his treasures. Anthony is enraged that she is aware of this, but he investigates and discovers his watch. Anne asks if he has taken his pills, considers her a worrier, and adds his other daughter would not hound him like that. He asks where she is, and Anne does not respond. Anne informs Anthony that she will be relocating to Paris. She claims they had already discussed it, but he does not remember. She claims she met and fell in love with a man named James and is heading to London to live with him. Anthony feels abandoned, but Anne assures him that she will still be able to visit him on weekends. She will simply not be able to check on him every day. She writes that if he refuses to have a caretaker, she will have to make alternative arrangements. Anne leaves, and Anthony discovers groceries, which he proceeds to store. But then he hears a noise in the flat and goes looking for the source. Anthony enters the living room and notices a man reading the newspaper. Anthony finds it odd and wants to know what he is doing in his flat. The man introduces himself as Paul, Anne's husband of 10 years, and claims that the apartment is his, not Anthony's. Anthony said he thought they were separated. The man, visibly distressed, contacts Anne and says her father wants to see her. Anthony informs the man that he thought Anne was relocating to Paris, but he argues that is not the case. He tells the man that he does not require a caretaker and would not leave his flat. The man tells Anthony that it is not his flat, and that he moved in with him and Anne after his previous babysitter resigned. Anthony does not believe him. Anne returns home, but it's not Anne, it's a completely new lady. Anthony demands to know who she is and where Anne is. The lady claiming to be Anne is horrified, telling Anthony that it is her and that she simply walked out to get food for supper. The woman is unhappy because Anthony does not recognize her. He claims he was just speaking with her husband, but she says she has been divorced for 5 years. Anthony believes the man was present, but he cannot be found in the flat, leaving him scared and despondent. The woman comes to check on him, alarmed, and suggests that he take his prescription, which she obtains for him and assists him with. He asks the woman whether this is his flat, but she does not respond. Anne returns to the apartment, on the phone, telling someone how Anthony sometimes doesn't recognize her. Then Laura, the new nanny she's hired to try out with Anthony, comes. Anne informs Laura that her father's conduct can be unpredictable, which is why she relocated him into her home. But she is unable to manage everything and requires assistance. Anne introduces Laura to Anthony, who surprises Anne with his delightfulness and charm. He discovers he's not wearing his watch and rushes to get it. When he returns, he informs Laura that he has 2 children, Anne and Lucy, and that Lucy is his favorite, which upsets Anne. He describes Lucy as a painter and asks why he never hears from her. Laura inquires as to his occupation. He was an engineer, but he informs her that he was a dancer and performs some routines to her delight. Laura chuckles, and Anthony says Laura reminds him of Lucy, to which Anne agrees. Suddenly, he brutally abuses Laura, frightening her. He then goes on a big rant about how Anne has always coveted his apartment and has now moved in with him, plainly trying to deceive him into believing he couldn't live on his own so she can send him to an assisted living facility and steal the apartment from him. He swears to survive her and inform everyone at her death that she was heartless. He leaves and Anne is upset, apologizing profusely to Laura, who claims such behavior is not unusual. Later, Anne unintentionally breaks a cup in the kitchen and sobs as she collects the shards. She imagines suffocating her father with a pillow. When Anne's husband Paul returns home, he inquires as to how things went. Anne informs him about Anthony's interaction with Laura and becomes agitated. He inquires as to what that is about, and Anne explains that when she returned home with the chicken, he did not recognize her. Anthony joins them when dinner is nearly finished, but he does not recognize Paul. He notices Paul's watch and becomes suspicious. He talks a lot about Lucy, and Paul stops him and openly asks how long he'll be lingering around. Anne brings Anthony to a doctor's visit, where Anthony informs the doctor of Anne's plans to relocate to Paris. She is astonished because she has never gone to Paris and will be staying in London. Later, at the flat, Anne assists Anthony in getting dressed, for which he expresses gratitude. He then overhears Anne and Paul chatting, with Paul telling Anne that Anthony needs to be placed in a facility, and Anne saying that a new caretaker is about to start. Paul says there will be a day when there is nothing else they can do, and they notice Anthony listening. When they're alone, Paul tells Anthony that he occasionally wonders whether he's being forgetful on purpose. He tells Anthony about how they had to cancel their trip to Italy after Anthony's previous babysitter quit. There is significant friction between Anne and Paul. Paul is clearly tired of dealing with Tony. When they are alone, Paul suggests that Anthony be placed in a nursing facility, and they continue the same talk that Anthony overheard previously, and he walks in on them again. The next morning, Anthony is in his jammies and Anne appears briefly before Laura appears. She brings him his prescription, and he rudely asks whether she's retarded and begs her to quit speaking down to him. When Anthony tells Laura that she reminds him of Lucy, Laura claims she heard about the accident and apologizes, but Anthony has no idea what she's talking about, so Laura changes the subject. The stranger arrives again, evidently startling Anthony, who has no idea who he is. While Laura exits to collect Anthony's clothes, the man, like Paul, boldly asks how long he'll be lingering around. He asks how long he will continue to wreck his daughter's life and begins mercilessly slapping him in the face. Anthony starts crying, and Anne walks in and discovers Paul standing next to him. She tries to calm Anthony, who is crying, by telling him she found his watch and served him dinner. Anthony says he assumed it was morning and is dressed in his jammies. In the middle of the night, Anthony hears voices. He jumps out of bed to follow them and ends up in a hospital hallway. He looks for Lucy and walks into a hospital room, where he discovers her gravely injured and asking for him. The next day, Anne informs Anthony that Laura is starting today. The doorbell rings and Laura appears, but it's not Laura, it's the woman. Anthony informs Anne that this isn't her, but she believes it is. Later, Anne visits Anthony, but this time his bedroom is located inside a nursing home. The woman is there, but she is a nurse named Catherine. Anne asks him if they could decide that living here is better for him. She says she is moving to Paris. He demands to know where Lucy is. Anne starts crying. Anthony calms her and holds her cheek. Anthony awakens in his nursing home room, and Catherine walks in to help him. He doesn't recognize her, but she claims to have been helping him for several weeks. He keeps pleading for Anne, but Catherine shows him a postcard from Paris. The man arrives. He too works at the institution, and his name is Bill. Anthony inquires as to who that is, as well as who he is and whether or not his mother will be visiting him. Anthony then sobs violently, pleading for his mother and claiming he has no understanding what's going on. He feels like he's losing all the leaves off his branches. Catherine consoles him, saying they will get dressed and go for a walk in the park. She assures him everything will be fine. Outside, the tree branches blow in the wind.
Please make sure that you like, follow, and subscribe to our channel. Check out the other videos if you watched this video all the way through. Cheers.